Is being built. Exactly. It is really puzzling to me that having just buried one monster, the Soviet Union, another remarkably similar one, the European Union, is being built. Exactly what is the European Union? Perhaps by examining the Soviet version, we can get the answer. The Soviet Union was governed by 15 unelected people who appointed each other and who were not accountable to anyone. The European Union is governed by 24 people who appoint each other, meet in secret, and are not accountable to anyone, and whom we cannot sack. One might say that the EU has an elected power. Well, the Soviet Union had a parliament of a sort too, the Supreme Soviet. We just rubber stamp the Politburo decisions, pretty much like the European Parliament does, where speaking time in the chamber is limited within each group and often amounts to 1 minute per speaker. In the EU, there are hundreds of thousands of bureaucrats with their huge salaries, their staff, servants, bonuses, and privileges, their lifelong immunity from prosecution, which is simply shuffled from one position to another, no matter what they do or fail to do. Is this not exactly like the Soviet regime? The Soviet Union was created by coercion and very often with a military occupation. The European Union is being created, admittedly not by armed force, but by coercion and economic bullying. In order to continue to exist, the Soviet Union spread itself further and further. The moment it stopped spreading, it started collapsing. And I suspect the same is true of the European Union. We were told that the purpose of the Soviet Union was to create a new historic entity, the Soviet people, and that we must forget our nationalities, our ethnic traditions and customs. The same seems to be true of the European Union. They don't want you to be British or French. They want you all to be a new historic entity, European, to suppress all your national feelings and live as a multinational community. After 73 years, the same system in the Soviet Union resulted in more ethnic conflict than anywhere in the world. In the Soviet Union, one of the grand purposes was the destruction of the nation state. And that's exactly what we observe in Europe today. Brussels intends to absorb nation states so that they should cease to exist. Corruption was built into the Soviet system from top down, and so it is in the EU. The same endemic corruption activity that we saw in the old Soviet Union has flourished in the EU. Those who oppose or expose it are silenced or punished. Nothing changes. In the Soviet Union, we have a gulag. I think we have a gulag in the European Union also an intellectual gulag known as political correctness. When anyone tries to speak their mind on questions of race or gender, or if their views differ from those approved, they will be ostracized. This is the beginning of the gulag, the beginning of your loss of freedom. In the Soviet Union, they told us we needed a federal state to avoid war. In the European Union, they are telling you exactly the same thing. In short, the same ideology underpins both systems. The EU is an old Soviet model presented in Western guise. But again, like the Soviet Union, the European Union has within itself the seeds of its own demise. Unfortunately, when it collapses, and it will leave immense destruction behind, and we will be left with huge economic and ethnic problems. The old Soviet system was incapable of reform, so is the European Union. But there is an alternative to being ruled by those 24 self-appointed officials in Brussels. It is called independence. You don't have to accept what they have planned for you. After all, you have never been asked if you wanted to join. I have lived in your future, and it didn't work.
That's Vladimir Bukovsky. He was a Soviet dissident who left or expelled from the Soviet Union. And there you see the Wikipedia entry for him. He died a year ago, well, almost a year ago. And he obviously is a conservative nationalist, Russian nationalist figure who rejected the European Union and then came to see a threat from the European Union. Before we go to attendance, I just want to mention that he gets credit for highlighting the role of the Soviet Union in using psychiatric wards as torture for dissidents in the Soviet Union. Of course, he was one of the supporters of Brexit, and he was quite during the Cold War. Anybody in the West who was a dissident who opposed the Soviet Union and had to leave the Soviet Union was considered something of a hero during the Cold War. But I should tell you that he did die last October, and he died under unfortunate circumstances. The British police found that he had child pornography on his computer, and he died a little bit in disgrace. So, okay, but so we don't forget, we should go to attendance because I will forget. And so if we go to, again, I have to share screen, and there's Cyber Campus share, and we go to this, okay, Policymaking European Union, go to attendance, and here we are in week 4, and start attendance. So your number, your lottery number, your bingo number is 886. 886 is your bingo number. So everybody please enter in 886 so that you register your attendance. By the way, I should mention I got the word from the administration yesterday that we're going to go back to we're going to start the hybrid model of some in-class meetings during the semester half in class and half not. And so not next week CUK begins, but the week after CUK, we will be meeting periodically. And the challenge will be for this class, since there's 18 people in the class is too big to meet all at once. So assuming we are going to meet on week 6, during week 6, this is week 4 right now, I will have to divide you into 2 separate groups. So 9 of you will come to class, and the other 9 will watch on Zoom, will attend on Zoom. So I will access Zoom from the classroom, which is K338, room 338 in the International Hub building upstairs from my office. 9 of you will be there, and the other 9 will be offline, will be online watching through Zoom. In fact, we'll all be online because I'll continue to use Zoom. I'll just take my laptop, my computer that I'm talking with you now, working with you now, and I'll take it upstairs to room K338 and access Zoom there because they also want us to record the classes, and Zoom records the classes, and it's really convenient because you have your computer screen. So when we start meeting face-to-face, please bring your laptop computers with you. Please bring your computers with you, your laptops with you, because I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to meet face-to-face in the classroom, and then I will start up Zoom there and just use the computer as the audio-visual side of the class, and then do things in class face-to-face that we can't do, obviously, face-to-face on Zoom. But we'll still be using Zoom as a course platform, okay? And 9 of you will attend 1 week, and then the second 9 will attend the next week, and the first 9 the week after that. I know it's awkward. I know it sounds kind of strange, but I think the idea is that for the benefit of your education, the university, both here and in the United States, everywhere, believes it is important that there be some kind of face-to-face component of your university experience, that you should come together. We should come together as a group, physically, in order to get the most benefit out of being at college, being at university, to interact with people, to talk to people, and to be motivated, to be inspired, to support each other. So that is why we're going to have the hybrid model, because that notion that it's important for you to have physical social interaction with people physically is part of the academic experience. And eventually, when the vaccine is finally distributed, we'll go completely online again, but probably the conditions will never be completely the same. I can imagine, for example, that Zoom is going to be used all the time because it's really convenient. I mean, like I showed you, I can record these class sessions and then upload them on Cyber Campus. That's really nice, regardless of whether or not we meet, face-to-face or not. So I can imagine we're going to continue to use Zoom even when we're meeting face-to-face, because it's convenient, it's useful, it's a nice platform. But anyway, so that's beginning the week after next. That's beginning the week after next. Okay, but we are this week and into next week, we are still completely online. And I now want to make sure that I open up the necessary files that should be opened up. And so let me open up my file for this class session and make sure I go back to Zoom, share screen. And first I have to open up the file. Okay, here we go, so share. So there's my files for the day. And institution, so you can see, let me make some points, right? That Vladimir Bukovsky's video that I was showing you, right? And let's see if I can go back to it, screen share. He's claiming, and this is an old video, right? Yes? No questions? Okay. So this is from 2006. This is 14 years old. This is old, right? And the Lisbon Treaty has been adopted since then. And he says, for example, that the European Union leaders are not accountable to anyone. Well, of course, he makes some very controversial statements, statements that, of course, many would argue are not accurate, are not true, particularly after the Lisbon Treaty that came into effect in 2009, right, 11 years ago. And even before the Lisbon Treaty, he exaggerates a bit. I already told you how back in 1999, the European Parliament was going to remove a commission, the Jacques Santer Commission, under Jacques Santer, because the Santer Commission was supposedly had a problem with corruption. So let me see if I can just find it here on let me see. So we go screen share, and yeah. So here's Jacques Santer, and he was the 9th president of the European Commission until 1999, and he resigned because the European Parliament was going to pass a vote of no confidence in his parliament because in his commission because of allegations of corruption. Let's see if I can find. He wasn't corrupt, but there was claims that there were problems with other people in his commission who were corrupt, and there was a former prime minister of France who was a commissioner. I can't remember her name. She was a follower of Francois Mitterrand, and she was hiring her friends, former dentists and the like, to be her close assistants in the commission. So, I mean, there's an example of how the commission resigned because the European Parliament was going to fire them, and the European Parliament is elected, right? You know, his statements are arguably a little over the top, right? In terms of making such statements that the European Parliament, the European Union is anti-democratic. And even since then, the Treaty of Lisbon, the role of the European Parliament has been further emphasized in the European Union policymaking process. He makes other statements, like there are hundreds of thousands of bureaucrats. There's not hundreds of thousands of bureaucrats. There's 33,000, about the size of the Ministry of Culture, French Ministry of Culture. That's it, about the size of a European city government. Not hundreds of thousands, unless you want to put all the Italian civil servants and French civil servants and Belgian civil servants who work for the Belgian government and the French government and the Italian government are somehow bureaucrats, right? An example of stereotyping. People that stereotype, they simplify, they oversimplify. And for various reasons, because he's clearly a Russian nationalist who hated the Soviet Union. He hates anybody or anything that threatens, you know, nationalism. And that's, you see that today with Brexit and in Britain and Donald Trump in the United States and as well. So, but if you look at let's open the notes here. So because you know, we should do that to make sure. So we've gotten through most of these notes, I think, already. We talked about the European Commission. We talked about how the 33,000 civil servants work in the Administrative Commission. You know, the Treaty of Lisbon really pushed to convince Europeans that there's not a democratic deficit, in the European Union, or they're trying to respond to it. They're trying to improve or increase the participation and the connection that the European citizens feel with the European Union. But as you highlighted in your paragraphs, you know, the European Union is really, really complicated. I mean, in terms of all of the different procedures and ways by which political actors can access that system in order to be able to do what they want to do or try to get what they want. The system is really, really complicated. It was made complicated on purpose, right? It was made to require lots of dialogue and communication, lots of negotiation, and it was not focused on, you know, decisive, firm executive branch decision making, like you see, you know, in France under Emmanuel Macron, or the attempts by leaders in the United States. No, because the European Union consists of European nation states, and you know, that fear of nationalism is always there, right? So they want to convince the European citizens that they They control the European Union, not the bureaucrats, not the civil servants, not even the national governments. So they want to emphasize the role of the European Parliament because the European Parliament is the only directly elected body of the European Union that the European Union citizens directly elect, right? The Council of the European Union, or what used to be called the Council of Ministers, that consists of ministers from national governments. They're elected too, but they're elected as representatives to be in charge of the national government of France and Germany and Italy. And then the government of Italy and France and Germany sends their minister in agriculture or finance, whatever issue is being discussed, to Brussels to negotiate and talk with the other national agricultural ministers. But the European Parliament members, those people are elected to the European Parliament. They're not elected to national governments. And yeah, they have elections, national elections, but they're national elections to elect people directly to the European Parliament, not to the national governments. So that has been how the European Union has attempted to increase the belief and spread the belief among the European Union people that the European Union is democratic, that it represents them, and they've done other things as well. Like in the Treaty of Lisbon, they had new initiatives, like, for example, a European Citizens Initiative. We highlighted how still in the treaties of the European Union, the European Commission has the sole legal right to formally submit proposals for new European Union legislation to the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union, the Council of Ministers, to begin working on it. Now, that sounds very conservative, very, very cautious, and it is, but keep in mind, I mean, the European Commission is going to do what the other groups and leaders in the European Union wanted to do. If the European Union Council, the European Council, or the Council of Ministers of the European Union, or the European Parliament members, a lot of members really want something proposed for them to debate and consider, they will propose it, right? They will propose it, right? They're not going to say, no, no. I mean, they don't do anything unless there's already consensus among the leaders of the European Union that they should do it. And they also added some other pro-participation initiatives in the Treaty of Lisbon, like the European Citizens Initiatives, where it said that citizens of the European Union can launch a petition among the European Union citizens, and if they get 1 million signatures on that petition, for example, to change the laws of the European Union or to do something in the European Union, then the European Commission will make a proposal on the basis of that successful petition. It won't go through the Council of the European Union or the European Parliament. It's something directly initiated by the people of Europe. And as of the time of the book was written, in 2018, your textbook, 30 initiatives have been launched, but only 4 of them at that point had reached the 1 million signature mark. And in response to it, the European Commission did come up with proposals regarding water quality in the area of, and keep in mind, I mean, the European Union is always trying to convince people, not just people, groups, I mean, interest groups, including for-profit interest groups, as well as not-for-profit groups, interest groups like environmental groups or animal rights groups or human rights, whatever, right? That they participate, and that and again, to persuade them that they don't need to be afraid of the European Union, that the European Union is going to oppress them by secretly reflecting and acting on the power of say, Germany, right? Let me show you. This just came to my mind, right? I signed up to the European Commission notification site, so I have to resume share here. Let's see if I can do this new share just to show you. This is my Gmail account, right? And so you see here, European Commission, have your say notification. So I get this about every day. The European Commission sends out this notification, and you can see these are all of the directives and regulations that the European Commission and the European Union are considering. And, you know, I mean, not many people care about these things, like horse passports, medical information, smart smart tachographs. What's a tachograph? I don't know. But there are people that are concerned about tachographs and horse passports because they are they're involved in farming or they own horses and they want to be able to transport their horse across member state countries in order to petition in equestrian events or whatever. So, you know, I mean, there are a lot of different motivations or reasons for people to want to pay attention to the European Union. So I accept cookies. And so you can see that this is the initiative. I can provide feedback and so, you know, and so when we say that the European Union citizens have the opportunity to participate, they've got to be motivated to participate, right? And usually people have different motivations for participating, including economic, business motivations, very important, but often very detailed and specific, right? Like we highlighted that tachographs. What is that? So that I can have my say. And, you know, I don't really, you know, care that much about transport in the European Union. I mean, I'm not a trucker. I'm not involved in the transportation industry. You know, so here's the proposal. And so I can provide feedback, right? So, yeah, I participate. I feel like I participate. So the European Union is always trying to convince the public that it is offering opportunities for people to feel like they are participating and having their voice heard. Okay, so, and so I have to go back and then I have to screen share again. And okay, so back to the notes. And you can see here are the notes. And the council used to be called the Council of Ministers. The council is the EU's primary decision-making body. You know, the Treaty of Lisbon tries to convince everybody that the European Parliament is equal to the council. Remember, there are different manifestations of the council. When the agricultural ministers of the member states meet, that's one formation of the council, and so on. But it represents the national interests of the member states. Its members are the national government ministers of the member states, and the member states bargain, negotiate with each other in the council as well as the other EU institutions. Keep in mind, these national ministers are busy men and women, right? So they're not always in Brussels negotiating and bargaining with each other. They're back home in Berlin or Paris or Rome or Athens or Sofia or Bucharest, wherever they are. And so they're permanent representatives, the COREPER, the permanent representatives of the member states to Brussels, to the European Union, the de facto ambassadors. They do most of the work to prepare for these council meetings. Right, so that these ministers, get in their planes and they fly into Brussels, and then they go talk to their permanent representatives in Brussels, and they say, okay, what's on the agenda today? And they're handed a list of, okay, this is on the agenda, and two things. Here's two proposals or two suggestions that we recommend that you choose from. So, yeah, okay, yep. I choose 1 and 2. Okay, bye. I got to go back to Paris. I mean, European Union is important to the member states, but that's not the only thing they have to worry about. They have to worry about political campaigns domestically for getting reelected. They have to worry about the United States. They have to worry about China. And so the point is that they rely upon these professionals in Brussels to do most of the work for them. And the professionals try to make most of the decisions. And those decisions that are too important or too controversial, those are the ones that go to the ministers and prime ministers and presidents when they meet, right? But most of the time, most of the work is done by these professionals. And the council shares legislative authority with the European Parliament. There are 9 different configurations. That's the term, configurations of the Council of Ministers, right? And when all of the member state agriculture ministers meet, or when the interior ministers meet, or the economy ministers, the widest area, the configuration of the council with the broadest area of policy responsibility is the General Affairs and External Relations Committee, which brings together the foreign ministers of the member states. So the foreign ministers come together and they address external political relations, also general issues dealing with policy initiatives and coordination. in politically sensitive matters. So, and that gives you a sense that, you know, again, the ultimate legal foundation of the European Union is international treaty law. Agreements, legal agreements, international legal agreements between states, the member states of the European Union. And so that's why the foreign ministers, when they meet, this is the most powerful configuration of the council, aside from, you know, when the European Council itself meets, the prime ministers and presidents, right? And it's the foreign ministers that meet. And the Council of Ministers has about 2,800 officials that work permanently for it. I don't think this includes, having said that, there's 2,800 people that work permanently for the Council in the Secretariat of the Council. Still, the member states can send their own civil servants from Italy or Germany or Bulgaria or Greece or Romania and send them to go work in Brussels. It's called being seconded, right? You're still working for the Italian government, but the Italian government decides that you as an Italian civil servant should go to Brussels and help those guys in Brussels, guys and gals in Brussels, come up with their policy proposals. Plus, you need to learn something about the European Union so that when you go back to Italy, go back to Rome, and to your office in Rome, you're going to have a better idea of what European Union requirements are, what expectations are when you're doing your job of governing Italy. Okay? So there are a lot of people that are seconded to the European Union who are not being paid directly by the European Union. They're being paid by the member states still as civil servants representing their member states. The council meets in some configuration every few days, right? So, so it's always busy. The agricultural, foreign, and economic ministers of the member states meet at least once a month. The other configurations meet from 1 to 6 times a year. But, you know, keep in mind, there's these professional full-time employees, staff of the council that are, you know, working continuously in Brussels. Constructivists claim that the institutionalization of the Council of Ministers has created a collective identity that goes beyond the national identities of the ministers. That the Council of the European Union consists of the national member state ministers, but they are so habituated, they are so accustomed to considering and formulating their activity as national ministers in terms of its implications, or considering about its implications for Europe, European Union, and in terms of both the decisional latitude they have and what is possible, what is not possible, that this has created this has been a foundation developing within the member state governments a broader European identity because of this growing perception that anything that I do in Germany, as the German agriculture minister, you know, I have to always think about how it fits within a European framework because agriculture is so dominated by the European Union, agricultural policy, right? And so, and that is encouraging through self-interest, political interest, as well as economic for-profit interests of the constituencies that the Farm Ministry, Agricultural Ministry represents, that it encourages the emergence of a pattern of action that is European regionally focused and supports this emerging belief that there is such a thing as a European identity, at least a European policy that overrides that the member state policies are part of. So yeah, this is, you know, I spend a lot of my efforts trying to apply what little I know about social psychology and political psychology to trying to understand what these constructivists are trying to explain. You know, so, you know, what is a belief? When I say I believe in the United States, I believe I'm an American. What does that mean? Remember, America doesn't exist anywhere. European Union doesn't exist. It only exists up here if it exists anywhere. Same with South Korea, North Korea, Japan, China. They all exist only up here. That's the only place those exist. So what does it mean to say I believe about in the United States? I believe in Europe. I'm a European. I believe that there is such a thing as a European Union. And how do you construct that belief? You know, Vladimir Bukovsky is afraid of these people because he thinks that they're going to try to create a European identity that overrides German and French and Italian. And he says it's going to fail. And it's going to fail catastrophically. And, you know, and then of course, Britain did vote to leave the European Union. And now they're being tested in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So just to continue on here, because we have a debate today on the second hour, and I already who is our debater, by the way? Let me get that person up and warned. Kim Hyun Chul. I hope I got to go back. Okay, so you're there. Good. So I already activated the share screen. So if I show you the share screen, and it should. I want to go back to the stop share. So if I go back here, and you can see under share screen. Under I've already activated multiple participants can share simultaneously. So it's already set to go. So when we do the debate, you should be able to to show your screen the same way I've been showing the screen, sharing the screen to everybody else. So if you have a PowerPoint presentation or you know, any kind of file, you can share it to everybody the way I'm sharing too. Anybody can, okay? So just so you know that if you have a PowerPoint presentation, you know, you can show it to everybody the way I'm showing screens now to everybody. So I just want to make sure that's clear, and I just want to make sure that Kim Hyun Chul is here, and I hear he is here. Okay, but we'll do that. We always do that during the second hour, right? So let me go back to the notes and then share screen and go back to the notes. Share. Audit. Okay, so the 2009 Lisbon Treaty merged two previous positions. The Commissioner for let me see. Do I want to? I'm going to show you something right now. All right, because I want to show you how current events illustrate a lot of activity going on. So we talked about how the European Union under the Lisbon Treaty, particularly, is trying to convince everybody that that the European Union doesn't have a democratic deficit, and nationalism is the problem. I mean, to be quite blunt about it, it's not just a problem in Europe, it's a problem in Asia, it's a problem in America, nationalism. You know, people fight and kill each other for a number of different causes, motivations, but nationalism certainly is one of them. I'm not saying it's the only reason why people engage in deadly force, as a deadly communal force, but it is important. And nationalism involves, as we talked about in class previously, right? A nationalist is somebody who believes that their nation should be sovereign. That their nation should be sovereign, and so you see, and they want to be sovereign because they think that the nation is under threat often, and they might think it's under threat from stereotypical xenophobic foolish ideas that we're going to be overwhelmed by all of these Muslims and Asians coming into Britain, and they're going to change us, and they're dangerous, and they bring crime. Or Donald Trump, you know, claiming that Mexican immigrants who come without documents, so-called illegal immigrants, so they're bringing drugs and they're rapists. And, these are all stereotypes, right? Stereotyping and emotion, including hatred and love, all go together. So A nationalist is an individual who sees him or herself as a member of a large group of people who constitute a community that is entitled to independent statehood and is willing to grant that community a primary and the primary terminal loyalty. So nationalists, for example, their nation is most important to them. More important even than family, right? Most nationalists will not forgive a sibling, a brother or sister or father who's a traitor to the nation. I mean, if you're the descendant of Chin Il-pa in South Korea, you don't proudly tell everybody, yeah, my grandfather, he collaborated with the Japanese occupier. You don't tell people that. That's embarrassing, right? And a community acts nationalistically when number two is true. When the typical citizen, not the average, but the typical biggest category of citizen is a nationalist. So what does it mean to act nationalistically? Because we say a community will act nationalistically when the typical citizen is a nationalist. And keep in mind, this has to do with genetics. People are predisposed to form in-groups versus out-groups. More than one. I mean, I'm part of the in-group D. Dominicez, I'm part of the in-group American, I'm part of the in-group Catholic, I'm part of the in-group man, I'm part of the in-group professor, I'm part of the in-group Ohio. Some of those are more important to me than others. But nation and family are typically the most powerful, emotionally strong self-identifications I have if I'm a typical human. I might not be a typical human, but if I am, I am likely to be a nationalist in a nation state. If I live in a nation state like China, Russia, Japan, Poland, Hungary, United States. So what does it mean to act nationalistically? When we say nationalism is the problem for peace in Europe, nationalism is the problem that the European Union is confronting, I'll tell you what it means. I know exactly what it means, all right? If I can find it here, and of course, I have to open up another file, and let's see if I can do this PowerPoint presentation, how long it takes. A nationalist is, let me see here. What is nationalistic behavior? Nation states, not like the old Soviet Union, not like old Yugoslavia, not like Cameroon, not like People's Republic of Congo, like United States, like Germany. Nation states will show a stronger inclination to see a threat from others and a greater tendency to see the threatener in stereotypical terms and that show a high degree of simplification, right? So the threatener is stereotyped as being not only a threat, the threat is evil, the threat is so dangerous, and the threatener is maniacal. It's not human in terms of the stereotyping. Number two, in a nation state, a greater likelihood exists that the leaders of a nation state will advance and consider seriously the option to expand state influence at the expense of other actors. In other words, they're more likely motivated by prestige and grandeur interests to expand Japan's or Germany's or Italy's influence just for the sake of expanding the influence of the state of Italy because it makes Italians feel proud about being Italian at the expense of somebody else. Okay? Remember, not all states are nation states. The Soviet Union was not a nation state. The United States is. Russia is. Soviet Union, anio. Soviet Union, only half the population of the Soviet Union was Russian. The other 50% were Ukrainians, Belarusians, Georgians, Armenians, Azerbaijanis, Turkmen, Kazakhs, and so on. But Russia is a nation state. So is China, right? Number three, a greater tendency will exist among the publics of nation states to show a motivational preoccupation with the objective of ingathering communities. So all Russians should be in Russia, and that we should take those parts of Ukraine, this artificial entity in the view of Vladimir Putin that Stalin created, and we should take Crimea and bring it into Russia because Crimea is to Russia what the Alamo is to Americans. Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, gave Crimea to Ukraine in the 1950s when it didn't matter because it was all part of the Soviet Union. He took it from Russia and gave it to Ukraine. Why? Because he felt bad about what Stalin did to the Ukrainians. But if you're Vladimir Putin, leader of a Russian nation state, Crimea is Russian. Crimea is Russian. And he took it. Ingathering of communities, right? This is called irredentism. Irredentism is a motivation that we associate with Mussolini's Italy. Mussolini, the fascist, nationalist, authoritarian, populist dictator of Italy, talked about Italia irredenta, unredeemed Italy. Parts of Italy that were still under the domination and abuse by those terrible Greeks and Croats and Slovenes, and they should be redeemed by being liberated, by joining, by being annexed to the Italian La Patria. The people in nation states will display a greater concern with maintaining faith and dignity, right, as represented by the state in the form of the government, that the President of the United States must be treated with respect, because the President of the United States is not just the President of the United States, he is the representative of the American nation. And so the government and its policies represent the nation, and that community will be motivated by desire to be concerned with that Russia gets decent respect. Or like, for example, yeah, Russia today, right? I mean, when you look at Russian foreign policy, they're trying so hard to be treated as an equal with America and China, even though, as we said, their economy is the size of Italy. The whole economy of Russia is the same as Italy, but they want to be treated equal. So they claim they already have a virus. They already have a vaccine against the virus, against COVID-19 coronavirus. Right? Yeah, we won. We are great, just like with the old Soviet. They call it what? Sputnik 5, after the Sputnik satellite that Russia, the Soviet Union, put up into space in, was it 1957? The first, in the late 1950s, right? The Soviet Union was the first to put a satellite into orbit, and everybody applauded the Soviet Union. Oh, wow, what a great country. And so they named their coronavirus vaccine Sputnik 5. Claiming they were the first. Woo-hoo! We were the first. We won the vaccine race. The public of a nation state will show greater likelihood to be susceptible to grandeur interests. Grandeur means beating up somebody, threatening and using deadly force against them, winning on the battlefield, to be quite blunt about it. Right? And the best example of that is Adolf Hitler in 1940, beating up France just to beat up France, right? National grandeur. Again, nuclear weapons makes this problematic. You can't win on the battlefield anymore because you might have a nuclear war and everybody will die. So how do you get glory and be the first to the moon in the late 1960s, right? The space race. Compete indirectly. We'll show you Koreans and Belgians and French and Congolese and Zimbabweans, well, that's before Zimbabwe, Rhodesians and Chileans, who's the best system, who has the best system by getting to the moon before the Soviet Union. Ha! America! Like, what did Neil Armstrong say when he stepped off the lunar lander in July 1969 and put his foot on the moon? He said, that's one small step for man. Sorry, women. One small step for man. Like, we'll go everywhere. We'll go to other planets. That's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. The American way, capitalism, liberalism, democracy is better than the Soviet communist way. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Yeah! And so you have this again today with the vaccine race. Who's going to be first? Who's going to get it distributed first? Who is going to convince the other countries of the world to adopt their vaccine? Because as we said earlier, if you're going to commit, say, to the Russian Sputnik 5 vaccine to be distributed in your country, you got to bring in Russian doctors, you've got to bring in Russian business people, you've got to bring in Russian specialists. You are integrating your country's medical care system significantly with Russia. And you're going to be committed. And you're going to develop vested interests in that, right? Because this is not going to go away for a few years yet. And there'll be future challenges with new viruses. And then we haven't even begun to talk about climate change and all of the tremendous amount of costs will be necessary to be paid to develop your country, not only with it being already poor as an African or Asian country, now you have to deal with the costs of climate change. And so you're going to be oriented with America, you're going to be oriented with China. Who's going to help you pay and develop? Let you export to their economy. Remember, if somebody's going to give you aid and access to their markets, they're going to want something in return. We don't believe in Santa Claus. Nobody gives you anything for free in this world, right? So, and in order to enhance the power of the state, effective appeals by state leaders to the citizenry to make sacrifices may occur, and leaders of nation states will show greater effectiveness in their appeals in this regard. So you can mobilize your people to fight in a nation state because you're fighting for Germany. If you're in the German army, you're fighting for Germany, not just the German government, for Germany, for France, for China, for Russia. You're going to fight for the people's, I mean, you have an advantage when you lead a nation state. I mean, the Soviet army at the beginning of World War II fought very badly at the beginning of World War II. What is this Soviet Union? Stalin and the communists are taking all the peasants' land, forming collectives. Millions of people are dying. I'm a Soviet soldier. I'm going to fight for this against the invading Germans. So the Soviet army pretty much was ineffectual at the beginning of the war until Stalin started appealing to Russian nationalism, traditional Russian nationalism. Fight for Mother Russia. You remember Mother Russia, that country that's been at war with the Germans for 1,000 years, since the Teutonic Knights of around 1000 AD, attacking the Baltic Russian areas. That Russia, Mother Russia. Oh, okay, I can fight for that if I'm a Russian soldier. I know what that is. And 7, the commitment of the military will be more intense, as I already highlighted. And this is important as well. The citizenry of a nation state will demonstrate a greater likelihood to grant the leaders of their government, of the nation state, a greater freedom, decisional latitude, autonomy in defending state interests, right? So if Vladimir Putin says he needs to dismember part of Ukraine and add it to Russia, the Russian people will applaud that. But he can't give it back up. There's no way I think Vladimir Putin can ever give up Crimea, despite the American and European Union sanctions on Russia for annexing Crimea. He can't. If he gives it up, he's done. His government will fall. He will fall. Politically, he can't do it. The citizenry will show a lesser likelihood of granting them the decisional latitude to accept defeats or the loss of face. And this is what the United States faced in Vietnam, right? The United States, by the late 1960s, realized that it made grossly wrong assumptions regarding the Vietnam War, right? Originally the Americans thought that the Vietnam War was, let's see if I can find it here. Well, I don't have it here. I have it in another set of slides. Was a war of Vietnamese nationalists against French and Japanese and later American control, and the use of their local puppets, clients, the Catholic aristocratic landowners of Korea, working with the French and later the Americans. But the Americans stayed in Vietnam for 5 years because politically it was very difficult for a US president to leave. This is what de Gaulle faced when France was losing its empire. Charles de Gaulle had to become president of France in 1958 when France was fighting a civil war in Algeria that killed, we don't know, 1 million Algerians. Because for French nationalists, Algeria was part of France. Algeria actually had representatives in the French parliament. We're going to leave Algeria? So many French people live there. That's part of France. And only Charles de Gaulle could come to power and stabilize that political system because of who he was, the leader of the French resistance, and he could negotiate and bargain to get France out of Algeria and prevent a military coup. France was close to having a military coup by those people in France who did not want to give up Algeria, right? And Charles de Gaulle came in, and there was assassination efforts being planned against him, and he was able to use his living embodiment, as a living symbol of French pride and nationalism to dominate the French political system to get France out of Algeria. It's very difficult. And so that's something similar today when Donald Trump says he's going to get the US out of Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm not so certain he can do that. After all of the American soldiers that have died fighting and all of the money spent and all of the wounded American boys coming back with their, and women coming back with their legs blown off and their faces ruined, and we're gonna leave. So when we say, you know, nationalism is the problem, I mean, you know, in European Union, that's what we're talking about. And so to go back to this issue about the European Union and dealing with nationalism and not triggering or stimulating German nationalism, French nationalism, Italian nationalism in a hostile anti-European Union direction. And it's possible. I mean, it's happening. You know, there are, like Brexit shows that, right? British nationalists rejected the European Union. Because keep in mind, nationalism is just one of the set of motivations that people have and groups that people have for participating in politics, European Union politics or national politics. You want to make other motivations more important and keep nationalism down. So you want to encourage making more money, right? But at the same time, you have to make people feel that their German identity is not being under threat. And this is an emotional, stereotypical, anti-rational, I hate that term, anti-rational fear. And Brexit played with that, right? That all of these migrants are going to come into Britain from the European Union, and they're going to bring their, and they're already coming. There is almost 1 million Polish people who live in Britain. And you and I might not care about that, but there are a lot of people living in Britain who disproportionately have lower education. They feel more insecure about their jobs. They see all of these Polish people and Bulgarians and Romanians coming to Britain, taking any job they can find that I, as a British person, won't take. And I'm thinking, they're the reason why I can't get a good paying job, because these people work for anything. They work for low wages. And that means employers don't want to pay real British people a real living wage. That kind of words. Those are all simplistic, stereotypical statements, and they work in popular elections when everybody from college professor to business leader to journalist to peasant to steelworker, they all have a vote, one vote. And there are a lot more steelworkers and peasants than there are college professors and teachers. So, okay, so I want to show you how, since the Treaty of Lisbon, the European Union tries to convince people in Europe that the European Parliament is a true participatory anti-nationalist means by which people can participate and feel like they're participating. So let me show you that news report if I can find it here, right? We talked about how it's really complicated in your paragraphs for the European Union to do anything, and it was meant to be that way, right? So this is from just a couple days ago in the New York Times. The European Union on Wednesday unveiled a new attempt to cajole reluctant member nations into participating in a common system for handling asylum seekers. People who come to the European Union, say from from Syria, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, they say, and they get to Italy or Greece or Malta or Cyprus, and they get onto the territory of Greece as a member of the European Union. They say, I claim asylum. I came from Afghanistan because there are people in Afghanistan who want to kill me for my religious and political beliefs. So that's why I walked and traveled and went through all of that danger over many days to get to Greece. I claim asylum. I need you to give me care and asylum to take care of me because I'm facing religious and political persecution. And according to a global international United Nations treaty from the 1950s, all the member states of the United Nations are supposed to say, okay, we will hear your asylum appeal. And it can take weeks, months, years for that process to work to decide whether or not that person from Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan or Congo or Libya or from wherever is really telling the truth, that they are being under threat for torture or killing because of their political and religious beliefs, and then they should be allowed to stay in Greece and therefore in the whole European Union, because if you're allowed to stay in Greece and given the right of asylum, you're allowed to travel throughout the European Union. And of course, the European Union leaders and people are suspicious that many of these people are not really suffering threats of violence and torture and killing for their religious and political beliefs. They want to get to European Union because they want to make some money to take care of themselves and their families, which is probably true, but that's not the same. You're not supposed to claim asylum for economic reasons. You're supposed to claim asylum because you're being persecuted and threatened with torture and killing for your political or religious beliefs, not because you're poor. So it says here, the European Union on Wednesday unveiled a system to cajole the reluctant member nations of the European Union into participating in a common system for handling asylum, right? Asylum seekers, offering them both cash incentives to take in refugees and quicker deportation of people who are denied asylum. So refugees, fleeing the civil war in Iraq and the civil wars in Syria and Afghanistan, 5 years ago, hundreds of thousands, even millions came. Over 1 million settled just in Germany. And they were all claiming that they are refugees fleeing persecution and violence and war, a civil war in those countries, being targeted for their identity as Muslim, Shia, or Christians, or women, or political dissidents. And so to address this, I told you at the last class, right? The European Union agreed over the objections of minority voters, of a minority in the Council of the European Union, to come up with a plan to bring and distribute those hundreds of thousands of people among all of the then 28 member states, now 27, and they adopted this proposal, and it was adopted, by the way, through one of these complicated procedures in the European Union, and Hungary, led by a populist nationalist Viktor Orban government under Viktor Orban, and others have simply refused. They simply refused their quotas. Some quotas that some countries, like Hungary, have simply ignored without penalty, right? Even though it was adopted by the European Union, Hungary and I think Poland and other countries have said, no, we're not taking anymore. No! What are you going to do, European Union? Invade Hungary? You're going to arrest Viktor Orban? You're going to call the European police and say, arrest Viktor Orban for refusing to carry out his obligation, or we're going to sue Viktor Orban. We're going to take him to court and we're going to sue him. No, they haven't done that. The Commission would replace that asylum one that was a system that was agreed 5 years ago with one in hopes would win the cooperation of all 27 member states. But it omitted crucial details about how the new arrangement would work. It would not make clear, for example, what penalties, if any, there would be for any EU countries that refuse to take part. It would also continue to place a large burden on Greece, Italy, and Spain, countries at Europe's southern edge where undocumented migrants most often arrive on the continent, right? Because they have borders with Turkey and they're across the Mediterranean Sea from North Africa, like Malta and Italy. Those countries have chafed at taking the lead in processing asylum applications, which can take more than a year, and at hosting thousands of migrants until they are either granted asylum or deported. So the system that's in place is that if these asylum seekers come to Italy, Italian territory, arrive, and they claim asylum, that Italy has to keep them in Italy until their asylum appeal application has been determined. And they stay there for months and years, building up thousands of people living in camps with nothing to do, having to rely on aid, getting desperate, getting angry, now with COVID-19. And on this proposal says the European Commission plan would offer countries like Denmark, Austria, Poland, Hungary 10,000 euros, or about $11,700 for each refugee they accept, ostensibly to cover early costs of travel and housing. It also invites countries in the bloc, European Union, to assist in the long, cumbersome process of trying to send rejected asylum seekers back to their home countries. It is not clear whether the proposal laid out more than 500 pages of documents released on Wednesday and touching on more than a dozen pieces of European Union legislation will survive the labyrinth approval process, and if so, how the blanks will be filled in. Officials hope a version of it will be agreed to next year. Now, I don't know the procedure that the European Union will use to consider whether or not to approving this proposal. What was adopted 5 years ago? I am not, actually, as I talk to you, I am not certain that the European Union followed this procedure in that case. Let's see if I can find it here. So this is the so-called ordinary legislative procedure, hooray! And that's its official name. It used to be called co-decision. The European Parliament and the Council of the European Union have an equal role in determining what the laws of the European Union will be. It used to be called the co-decision procedure, and then the Treaty of Lisbon renamed it the ordinary legislative procedure because it's supposed to be ordinary. Like, again, trying to convince Europeans, see, European Union is a democratic political system, just like the German national political system, or the Italian national political system, or the French national political system. It's democratic. And here in the European Parliament has an equal say with the Council. So there's a proposal from the Commission, and I just read to you that news report today about how the Commission has prepared a proposal for changing the asylum system in the European Union. I assume it's going to go through this process. Now they have to get the opinions from the national parliaments. So the German parliament, the Italian parliament, the French parliament, the Belgian parliament, the Bulgarian parliament, all of the parliaments have to give their opinions. Then they have to get their opinions from the European Economic Committee and the Committee of the Regions. Then it goes to the first reading by the European Parliament. The Parliament adopts a position and maybe even demands amendments. Remember, the only directly elected body in the European Union is the European Parliament. Then the Commission can amend its proposal. Then the Council considers it. The Council of the European Union approves the Parliament's position, it's done. If the Council approves what the Parliament wants, it's finished. However, if the Council and the Parliament disagree on the amendments to the European Commission's proposal, then the Council adopts position at its first reading. They say what they want changed in what the Parliament has proposed. Second reading by the European Parliament. Parliament approves the Council's position at first reading. So if the Parliament agrees to change according to what the Council wants, then the act is adopted in early second reading, or if the Parliament does not agree to what the Council proposes, then it proposes more amendments. Then the Commission gives its opinion on the Parliament's newest amendments. Yeah, it's complicated, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be democratic. Then there's a second reading by the Council of the European Union. If the Council approves all the Parliament's amendments, the Council position to the Council's position from the first reading, then the act is adopted. If the Council does not agree and the Council and Parliament disagree on amendments to the Council's position at first reading, then the Council and the Parliament delegate responsibility to a certain number of their members to try to conciliate, come to an agreement on the changes that they can agree on. The Conciliation Committee, it's a small group from members, from representatives of the Parliament and the Council, come up and agree on a joint text. If the Parliament and Council agree with the proposal from the Conciliation Committee, the act is adopted. If Parliament and or the Council disagree, then the act is not adopted. So this is the ordinary procedure. I assume that this messy, complicated, democratic procedure is what they will use to consider this. It's going to take a long time. And I'm not certain about that. But I think, it said here, the proposal by the European Commission, the bloc's executive arm, so it's a formal proposal, which they, of course, came up with by first talking with the member state government representatives and the European Parliament. I mean, they don't prepare or propose anything that they haven't already talked a lot about with the other leaders of the European Union. And now they're going to offer Poland and Hungary and say, if you accept this, we'll give you 10,000 euros for each asylum seeker that you accept. Money, money, money. We'll see if it works. I mean, maybe it will. It's a new idea, creative idea. Bribe them. Bribe Poland and Hungary. You know, so there's more detail over here. So that's an example of the ordinary legislative procedure. And the European Union insists that about 80%, most European Union legislation now follows this procedure, including everything, pretty much everything that has to do with business and economics goes to this ordinary legislative procedure. And most internal security and frontier asylum policy goes through this procedure as well. So we'll have to see if this proposal will go through this long procedure to be determined whether or not it'll be accepted. Okay, so co-repair. We already talked about the permanent representatives. That's the French acronym. There are two sub-bodies of it. This is actually the more important one. Co-repair 2. It's the permanent ambassadors dealing with the big political, institutional, and budgetary issues, and co-repair 1 deals with the other issues. 70% of the decisions of the Council of the European Union are made here before ministers get directly involved. And then, you know, basically the ministers get directly involved when they've got to, you know, put their stamp of approval on pretty much of the work that these people have done. You know, the constructivists emphasize that this is how you slowly build up a European belief and a European identity through institutions and developing and encouraging participatory institutions. I mean, this isn't building an empire. You're not creating a European identity by conquering Europe the way the Germans tried in World War II. No, you can't do it that way. It won't work, right? Napoleon tried, Hitler tried, it won't work. People have to want to participate in this process. But that means you've got to accommodate and not provoke the sleeping bear of nationalism. Let the sleeping bear of nationalism stay asleep. If you can, let it stay asleep. But remember, there's always those militant nationalists everywhere. Marine Le Pen in France, Alternative for Germany in Germany, neo-fascists in Italy, Trumpists in the United States. They're always around. Question is, how much support, political support from their fellow citizens do they receive? Can you keep them marginalized? And it's hard to keep them marginalized when people become more afraid and scared with migrants and now with COVID-19. The world is going into the greatest economic downturn since the 1930s, supposedly. You know, nationalism tends to emerge when there's rapid change in the community, including the high degree of insecurity and fear that rapid change causes. That's why I'm not so certain that Donald Trump's going to lose on November 3rd. Because remember, the modal citizen, this person, I mean, the people that support Trump, they are incredibly enthusiastic. They think that they know what is right, that it's right by God, that it's right by their heart, and it's right by their nation. The people that support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the United States, they say, yeah, we don't like Trump. We support Biden, you know, we don't get excited by him. Wah. But the people that support Trump, they view him as a second coming of the Messiah. White hot enthusiasm. They think that Donald Trump speaks from the heart, a true American. They don't want to hear about LGBTQ oppression, about blacks, you know, being oppressed by the police. No. So, and, you know, migration is an intensely sensitive topic because of nationalism, That's why migration is an intensely sensitive topic. Politically sensitive, because of nationalism. So we already talked about the European Council. The European Council is the meeting of the heads of state and government, or you could say heads of government and state, HO, heads of government and state. So that would be easy to remember, right? That acronym would be HOGS. They're also called summits. They began as an informal series of meetings among heads of state and government. The Lisbon Treaty formally recognized the meetings of these heads of government and states, and in the form of the European Council. So the European Council now exists as an official EU institution. Before it was informal, you know, the prime ministers would get together, the president would get together. Now it's officially part of the European Union institutional setup, the European Council. It has its own bureaucracy that works for it. The president of the European Council, it's a bad name, you know, I think the translation is unfortunate. He's more like the Secretary General of the United Nations. His job is to organize these meetings, right? And so it meets at least 4 times a year, while 6 times a year has been the norm more recently. And it's probably going to meet more, well, 6, I mean, that's once every 2 months. That's a lot of meetings, right? For the presidents and prime ministers to get together. The most difficult issues that cannot be resolved at lower levels by co-repair and the ministers, they go to the European Council. And they're not involved in the day-to-day operation of the European Union, but they set the agenda, right? And the Lisbon Treaty created a president of the European Council who is supposed to be there to organize these meetings. And who did I have here as yeah. So just to open this up, right? So we see here, who's the president of the European Council? Is Charles Michel, right? He is the current president of the European Council. Again, but his job is like the chief secretary. And I think he's another former Belgian, I think. Who is this person? I mean, there's a reason why they choose the former leaders of small countries like Belgium to be the president of the European Council, because Belgium is a small country, right? The French are not so suspicious that this person might be too much under the influence of Germany. The Germans are not too suspicious that this person might be under too much influence of France. That's why we haven't had presidents. He's the 3rd president of the European Council. The other 2 before him were Herman van Rompuy, another former Belgian prime minister. He was the first one. Oh, I didn't know he was a count. Oh, he was an aristocrat. Oh, ho, ho, a Yangban. That's not a coincidence. And Donald Tusk, a former prime minister of Poland. Not too close to Germany, not too close to France. Big country, but small economy compared to, you know, and this person. They're not going to put a big name, powerful person. Like, I would seriously doubt that Angela Merkel will ever be president of the European Council, or that that Emmanuel Macron will ever be president of the European Council. When he's done being president of France, Emmanuel Macron will never be president of the European Council, because France is too big and powerful. And he might say, well, I am not the president of France. I used to be the president. Still, the perception will be that he might be working for France. So there had been some talk that the first president of the European Council would not be him, that it might be Tony Blair, the former prime minister of Britain. But people said, no, you can't make Tony Blair the first president of the European Council. A lot of people in Europe, not all, are going to be suspicious that Tony Blair is working for Britain. even if he says he's not. And they're not even part of the Eurozone. So how can you make Tony Blair president of the European Council? So they go with these, you know, non-threatening actors coming from weak countries so far. So the European Parliament is the only directly elected EU institution. It is set at about 750 members. These members had to be redistributed from Britain to the other member states of the European Union. And I have to check to see how that was done. I'm sure on Wikipedia you can find out. You can find out everything on Wikipedia. You know, these actors, like the European Union entries for and Wikipedia are always really nice, which tells me that the European Union is paying somebody to make nice Wikipedia entries, right, for these entries. So if we look at European Parliament elections 2019, it doesn't really say. How about UK? So these people left the European Parliament that were elected to the European Parliament from Britain. And so I don't know what happened with their seats. They just left, they walked out, and I guess that's what's happened, right? That they all left the European Parliament, these people that were elected to the European Parliament, and the British seats are empty. Until the next European Parliament elections. I have to check later. Okay, so it's complicated, right? It's based in Brussels, but when all 750 members of the European Parliament get together, it's called a plenary session. Like the United Nations General Assembly, I think just had or still having its plenary session virtually, largely virtually, for the 75th anniversary of the creation of the United Nations. The plenary sessions when everybody in the European Parliament gets together, and they're supposed to meet in Strasbourg in Alsace-Lorraine region of France on the border with Germany. So they got to move all of their documents, all of their materials from Brussels to Strasbourg when they meet in plenary session. Why? Because it's supposed to keep French nationalist public opinion supportive of the European Union, because Strasbourg, Alsace-Lorraine, Strasbourg is the main city in Alsace-Lorraine. That was a big topic of French-German war in the 19th and 20th century. So by having the European Parliament meet in Strasbourg, it also boosts the economy in Strasbourg, but it appeals to French nationalism. The European Union, in the form of the European Parliament, is good for France. So the French don't want this to stop. Other people complain, we've got to stop doing this. Everybody's got to get on a train and a bus and trucks, and all of this material costs money to do this, to have our official full plenary sessions in Strasbourg, but they never get rid of it because of nationalism. So the largest member states have 96 seats in the European Parliament. The smallest, little Malta, has 6. I mean, Malta is not even 500,000 people, and they have 6. They have 6 members. Germany has 88 million people. So if you divide, let's say, let me see if I can find applications here. Applications, and you divide 88 million by 96. So calculator. So like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, divided by 96, you get this, right? So there's about 1 million Germans just under 1 million Germans represented for each of the 96 European Parliament members it has. Malta, I think, what is the population of Malta? Let's see what the population of Malta is. Malta, and its population is 500,000, right? So get back calculator, where'd calculator go? So Malta gets divided by 6. So Malta gets 1 European Parliament representative for 83,000 Maltese, right? And Germany accepts this difference. They have to because of their history, right? Nobody benefits more from European integration than the Germans. They need to keep the rest of Europe feeling that Germany is not a problem, even though the German economy is the dominant economy in Europe, even though at least a third, if not more, of the German economy depends upon imports and exports to other European and world countries. Don't be afraid of Germany, despite what they did in World War II and I. Okay, so we should go to our debate. Okay, you ready to do our debate? This is the first Zoom virtual debate we've ever had in class, and now we're going to see it work. So let me go back to the debate topic. To South Koreans, the European Union's institutional complexity prevents fears of German imperialism. Pro is Kim Hyun-chul, con is me. So who's going to keep time? Who is going to keep time? So let me stop share and then screen share. And let me ask, who amongst our students, let me see who's here participating. Somebody who's had me in other classes. And Hyo-ryung, are you there, Hyo-ryung? Pak Hyo-ryung. Hyo-ryung?
Can you hear me?
Okay, Hyo-ryung, you're going to time us, okay? Because you've been in my classes before, so you know how this works. So, you know it's 6 minutes opening statement for pro, then followed by 6 minutes opening statement for con, then pro rebuts for 4 minutes maximum, then con rebuts and concludes for 7 minutes maximum, and then pro has the last word for 3 minutes maximum. And we may have time for questions as well. So we will allow people to try to ask questions, and I will try to write down who asked the questions so that I can give them participation credit, okay? And so, are you ready to keep time? I hope you're ready to keep time, Hyo-ryung. I've already allowed Hyun-chul and everybody else to be able to share screens the way I've been sharing the screen. So I now want to go to Hyun-chul, and Hyun-chul, please go ahead. Do you have any kind of PowerPoint presentation or file that you want to show?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, so can you go ahead and screen share and show us?
Okay. Can you see?
No, I can't right now, and I don't know why. If I stop share, yes, I have to stop share. Now that I stop share, I can see it. Okay. So, and so, all right. Ready, set, go.
So one of the pro side, that speak of the two South Koreans, the European Union institutional complexity prevent fear of German imperialism. So here we go. So firstly, like I want to tell about the Germany's participation in World War II is a good example of the pure fascism, which is Germany aimed to restore its borders in 1940s and abolish World War I compensation, which provided ample grounds for the Nazi regime to be supported. This was a transitional period of the Great Economic Depression, and the use of the hard power was not much criticism at that time. Most of all, like multiple nations had at least one colony, and imperialism like was prevailed. Next, after all, like World War II ended, the Cold War arrived, and the Korean War broke up. During the Cold War, the U.S. forces fought in the Korean War, experienced the Cuban Missile Crisis, and provided dollar aid to European countries in the name of the European Marshall Plan. Despite the embarrassing one through the War of the Japanese, the U.S. the forces stationed U.S. troops in Japan in Okinawa, while supporting the Japanese economy prevent the spread of communism. And third one is the United States provided dollar aid, and finally, the Cold War ended with the fall of the Soviet Union. Eventually, the United States took over world hegemony, and the United States tried to deploy American troops around the world to take it away. The most of the countries all over the world turn to the democratic country, whereas people are the owner of the nation, even in the European countries. The next one is, in modern times, most countries have embraced American democracy, and the world started to move on money. United States now has created soft power through Hollywood movies and pop songs, which makes the United States a justified country. But the funny thing is, the US spent $750 million on the military investment to keep their first predominance. And actually, I have found some interesting things during searching the intels here, and that is communism was created in European countries, but there are no communist countries in European countries right now, and most of them are now in Asia. I just wanted to show you because it's a little bit interesting. So next slide. The Europe now has entered the modern era, become more perfect, and finally establishing the EU. There are no traffic restrictions between their countries, and they started using the same currency. But freedom is not limited to economy and their traffic. The EU is enacting a system of monitoring to each other to prevent condemnation of World War II. And like, for example, the criminal activity within the country can be arrested or punished in their countries by their criminals government, where the places like the criminals was happening. But no government in the world can like punish the criminals, and it's what called the anarchist states. But the EU has laid the background work for regulating it. So I just want to tell you that the European Commission created in powerful like joint body and took on democratic responsibilities. And there's several governments in the EU agreed on Commission policies and agreed on the policies and law. So this is exactly what three pillars of the European Union presents in chapter 1 of our textbook. Like if you open our textbook for page number 5, the pillar 1 describes the European community, and pillar 2 here is describes about the common foreign and security policy, and pillar 3 explains about the justice and home affairs. For of these, we need to focus on pillar 2 and 3. Like, for example, in the modern world of internationalization, Interpol is striving to seek the consensus and cooperation. but the EU is like focused on legislating more fundamental measures. The European Commission is the most powerful international executive and empowering EU member states to impose and administer the right laws and legislating this. And the manage contracts according to the mandate and propose the practical policies. Now, currently, the EU is in the position to monitor to each other under strong laws and the constitution. The reason Germany has fallen for imperialism is in the economy situation in Germany, in fact. So it is well aware that other countries like Germany do not promote imperialism.
Time's
so
up.
Here, that's
Time's up.
okay.
Okay, so you're going to speak twice more, so you got lots of time. So let me make my opening statement. And I had to unmute. I forgot to unmute because that's something to keep in mind. All right, so I will make my opening statement, and let me see. I want to make sure that I'm able to share my screen and go back to the debate topic if I can find it here. And it says here, to South Koreans, the European Union's institutional complexity prevents fears of German imperialism. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an important question. I mean, it looks like there's not too much fear of German imperialism in the European Union. Even the British, I mean, if you look on YouTube during the Brexit campaign, anybody can post anything on YouTube, right? So it doesn't really mean anything, but there were people claiming that basically the European Union was serving Germany. But in looking or hearing news reports and reading news reports about the Brexit, I didn't really see much taken seriously that somehow Germany dominates the European Union. The concern was rather that it seemed to be the prevailing view was that tying British economy to this European Union would be a dead weight, like an anchor on a ship that pulls a ship down into the ocean. It would be an anchor on the British economy because the European Union is so complicated and it's so ossified with so many big, expensive welfare states that tax too much, and it's too easy for people to retire. That people in a lot of countries can retire far too early, and they have to pay their pension to pay for their retirement because they can retire when they're in their 50s. I mean, that's an anchor, a dead weight, a ball and chain, chaining down the vibrant, active, dynamic British economy. But never people saying that the Germans are using the European Union institutions to cover up their economic powers so they can take control and colonize us through their economic wealth of their German corporations investing and dominating our industry. I never saw that. All right? But why did they not fear Germany? And this is an important question because you need to know truly what is the reason for people's political behavior. What are their true motivations if you're going to plan strategy for a peace or strategy to conquer? You've got to know their true motivations of the target of your policies. You have to know the collective foreign policy motivations of your target of the target of your policies. And those motivations will be complicated, but some motivations will be more important than others. And this is what structural realists emphasize in the United States. Neo-realists, also called structural realists that we're talking about the US foreign policy class, emphasize the reason why France and Italy and Poland are not too concerned about German foreign policy motivations is because of NATO, not European Union complexity. The European Union doesn't keep Europe safe. NATO keeps Europe safe. NATO means the United States. NATO means the United States. That's why the Poles are not too concerned about German investment controlling their economy. That's why the French and the Germans and the Italians have the luxury of promoting European integration because of NATO, not the complexity of the European Union. What is the European Union? They can't even make Hungary and Poland accept the quotas of their refugees they're supposed to accept. Do you really think the European Union is what's pacifying the Poles and the French regarding Germany? No, don't make that mistake, because if you make policy decisions and strategy on the basis of false, wrong, incorrect assumptions, you will cause a disaster. You will risk contributing to a disaster. The same way those false, wrong assumptions regarding why Germany was belligerent in the late 1930s led to appeasement, that Germany is being belligerent under Hitler because they feel nationally humiliated by the Versailles Treaty and the restrictions on Germany put on Germany at the end of World War I. And if we appease them and give them national self-determination and allow all Germans into Germany and treat them as an equal, treat them with dignity and respect, as an equal member of the European nation, family of nations, with equal, that they will become nice and peaceful. And that was wrong. And it made war, and appeasing Germany made it more aggressive, because its belligerency was not due to indignation, humiliation. Its belligerency was because it saw the rest of the world as being weak and decadent and lacking the will to resist. So you've got to have an accurate explanation for why countries are acting the way they act. And they're not afraid of Germany because of NATO, not because of European Union complexity. Don't make that mistake. The United States, therefore, must stay in Europe. Donald Trump is a problem because he's threatening NATO. Because if he leaves the European Union, if he withdraws America from NATO, it's going to bring us back to bad old Europe that we all want to forget. And we get deluded by these, beliefs sorry?
1 minute left.
Yeah. About our beliefs in the European Union economic integration and the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers and the ordinary legislative procedure and the European Central Bank with its oversight of blah, 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 blah. The points have been made that 100 years ago, the European economies were 120 years ago, the European economies were economically as interdependent as they are today. And that did not stop World War I from happening. Don't make this mistake. We can't afford to make the mistake we made after World War I to allow World War II to happen. We've got to learn from history. The stakes are too high to screw this up. That's why Europe is not afraid of German imperialism, because of NATO, and that means the United States and its military deployments in Europe. Okay. Pro will now rebut.
Okay. Actually, I just came to top of my mind, and I want to tell you about my real story that I served in the military service for 2 years, in the where the place is this discharge from the Korean military academy. It's called in Korea, it's a 육군사관학교, where I just discharged from 2 years ago. And this is a place the military general, the people, the graduates, and there I actually learned the two things, and which was the South Koreans, the enemy was not like a Japanese who ruled South Koreans, but not the Russians, but it's the North Koreans. And then the Korean armed force cannot use without the military threat from the foreign powers. If I say this, so why do you think the Korean army can't use the military power without damaging the military threat to South Korea? Because it's basically it's established for self-defense. It was not actually long time ago. It was the Korean military service was not established like that way, but it's now became for self-defense, because the U.S. the military now is the troops are stationed in South Korean base camp, and they are protecting us. And actually, it's the same theory that if it goes to the German imperialism. Actually, it's pretty old theory, but I want to show you about. Can you show my file?
Yes, I see it.
Yeah. I want to show you this. Sorry. It's not a. Oh, so it's about. We talk about the democratic peace theory, which is spoken by the Kenneth Walsh, and it says between the democratic country to democratic country, it's not actually there's a less percentage to happen the real war, and but that's why we're thinking we're dealing the North Korean people as a war as an enemy and hostile, and and after all, like if you open the page 58 here, it says power sharing and consensus, and it says in a European the case it's kind of different. I want to tell you that the EU deals with a QMV, and they have to carry about its own member states. It connects among the power sharing and consensus. Through that, the European member states can make their enlargement and free to going and throwing between the rich variety of the actors and internal pressures.
How
okay,
much time?
15 seconds left.
Yeah, my opinion is done. So.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with your statement. It sounds like you're saying that there's peace in the Korean Peninsula because the Americans are here. I mean, that's the point I'm making about European Union, that the United States brings its presence I'm not saying the United States is a great, wonderful country, but it won World War II overwhelmingly in the West. And it's so economically dominant that its hegemony also, you know, the claim is made that American hegemony, since it's based upon capitalism and at least, you know, a preference for democracy, although, you know, Donald Trump doesn't seem to care too much about that in dealing with the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and other authoritarian traditional dictatorships in the Middle East, that, you know, that American hegemony, you know, is not just based upon military power, but it is fundamentally based upon the best system for developing power resources, both hard and soft. That somehow hard and soft power are connected. You know, that race to the moon and the vaccine race is about showing which system is best for producing welfare for the people or achievement and capabilities for communities, right? And, you know, of course the Chinese say their system is best, but, you know, okay, you know, you might be good at shutting down an entire city on quarantine, but in terms of being creative, we'll see. I mean, the argument is that, well, we'll see. I mean, the Chinese don't believe that American hegemony is based upon soft power advantage. But, you know, again, why are South Koreans and Japanese cooperating? It's not because they overcome their animosities and they're both democratic countries. It's because of, you know, you mentioned the democratic peace theory, okay? Yeah, I mean, so if there's a Wikipedia entry for democratic peace theory, and if I, you know, show it to you here, here you see the entry, although it's not very developed. And there you see Charles de Gaulle and Konrad Adenauer of Germany, you know, signing their treaty of peace and cooperation. But, you know, they're able to do this because the Americans are there. Similarly, the Koreans and the Japanese, the South Koreans and the Japanese are able to cooperate despite their much more contentious history and of unresolved disputes because the Americans are there. All right, and that goes back to our debate topic that the peace in Europe and the lack of fear regarding Germany's intentions are founded upon American economic, political and economic hegemony. Hegemony doesn't mean direct control, but the overarching framework within which the Germans and the French and the South Koreans and the Japanese interact is a capitalist and military set of capitalist trade and security regimes focused upon American set up institutions, which, because they're different from the Soviet Empire, unlike what Vladimir Bukovsky was highlighting, because there are lots of opportunities to influence the United States through the Congress, through the two houses of Congress, the US Senate and US House of Representatives, through the US president, through the US media, through the US corporations, through American civil society institutions, including churches. I mean, Protestant churches here are so influenced by the American experience, or the Catholic Church in the case of the Catholic University of Korea, that it's not a Soviet communist empire that the Americans have constructed here. It's not, obviously not that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying America is a great, wonderful country that doesn't make mistakes, that doesn't do bad things. Of course it does. But, according to this American exceptionalist argument, American hegemony is different from Soviet hegemony. It's different from obviously Nazi German hegemony. It's different from imperial hegemonies in the past. And that needs to be understood, that the Americans can make mistakes, and Donald Trump is a problem, and we take for granted what the Americans have created. But hopefully, Donald Trump will from the perspective of somebody who supports Joseph Biden, let us say, that if Biden becomes president, we'll go back to the Obama administration type policies, which means more consultation with allies, more cooperation on climate change, depending upon what happens in the elections in November, and that the situation is not perfect regarding the United States under Obama or Clinton or previous presidents. But one thing to keep in mind in politics is that the situation can always be worse. You think things are bad now, they can always be worse, with more human suffering, with more poverty, more bloodshed, more violence. So we have to build on what exists to make a better world in the future. You can't just erase what is, and we have to, but we have to understand what exists, that the foundations for peace in Europe and peace in East Asia is American hegemony, not the complexity of the European Union's institutions. The complexity of the European Union's institutions help, but that's not the foundation. It is America's democratic political system and its economy deployed to Europe. It's deploying power resources, hard and soft, economic and military, and soft power to Europe and Asia. Okay, so that's where I'll stop. Pro, you have the last word.
Okay. Whether the EU is representing the European peace or not, we can't deny now. Today, we're living in world peace, not like in 1900s. The topic is asking about to South Koreans. So I want to ask about, like, I can see some of the European people, exchange students here, and actually, like, the South Korean, the word case is not actually done. It's just temporarily stopped, but they didn't really can feel about any threat from the North Korea. If they really feel that maybe there's no one exchange student in Korea, and so just I want to tell you that actually we're living really in peace thanks to the U.S. the first predominance. So, and I want to tell you about in the China's case as well. Like we know there's a subjugation in Hong Kong by the China government through the internet. Even though there's a telecommunicational censorship, the world is watching tragedy, and the world is focusing on the corruption, even democratized European member states, which is basically running under the capitalistic system in Europe. European member states can easily turn to hard power using imperial nation. Of course, European Council is not 100% perfectly stable and constructed, but however, the raising imperial nation is again, raising imperial nation again is almost close to impossible. But now, currently, the EU is in a position to monitor each other under strong laws within the best opportunity to cost.
1 minute
The
left.
Germany has fallen for imperialism is in the economic situation in Germany. In fact, it is well aware that other countries like Germany do not promote imperialism. China nowadays getting onto the second predominant place in the world, and some of you people may know, but it's pretty voluntarily. I heard there's recent news that the CPU company names ARM, which is originally British company, but and they branched it to China, but they declared to separate the Chinese ARM HQ at their own discretion, and most of all, China government allowed it, which is we in this situation on their own constitution, which doesn't make sense actually. Why do you think this volatile country doesn't make a war? Well, personally, I just want to tell you that I think this is about the role of the world predominance, United States. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, well, we only have 2 minutes, and now I want to do a poll, and I want to ask you first, who won the debate? So launch poll, pro or con, cannot decide. And I've set this up anonymously, right? I don't know how you will vote because I have set this up. You can see here, let's see if I can show it to you. Well, no, I got to be careful here. I don't screw things up. Let me just, did I already screw this up? Oh my God. Okay, launch poll. Okay, so go ahead and vote. Three more votes. 2 more votes. Like I said, this is anonymous, so I don't know how you voted. 1 more vote. 1 more. We can't spend too much time on this. I'm gonna have to end this in 10 seconds because there's a second poll I want to do. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so end poll and share results. So there you see the results. And I got to be careful here because I hit one button and I don't want to screw. I did this once before and I lost the video recording, so I got to be careful I don't do that. So there's another poll I want to do. Stop sharing and let's go to it and grade the debate. Again, this is anonymous. I don't know how you're voting because I've clicked it. I've made it anonymous. So how would you grade this debate? A+, A, B+, B, C+, C, on down. Again, this is anonymous. I don't know how you're voting. I set up the poll to make it anonymous. I just can't show it to you. I don't want to screw around with the polling thing because I might shut down the Zoom. I don't want to do that. Two more, 3 more. 2 more. And I think we'll just take 1 more. 10 more seconds. 5 more. Okay, so I will end the poll and I will share the results. And there you see the results. Okay. All right, that's it for today. And anybody have any questions? If not, I will give you more feedback on Monday, the week of Chuseok, what we're going to do in the future, okay? So talk to you on Monday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.